In 1799, preserved animal skin arrived in England from the Australian colonies. A British scientist named George Shaw received it, examined it very carefully, and then picked up a pair of scissors and started cutting around the bill.
He cut the bill?
He was looking for stitches. He was completely certain that someone had sewn a duck's bill onto the body of a beaver as a hoax. It was the era of elaborate taxidermy frauds, and this thing in front of him was, by any conventional scientific logic, impossible.
An animal with a duck bill and a furry body.
With webbed feet and a flat tail, and, it would later turn out, ankles to produce venom. He found no stitches, none, and he wrote in his notes, and I love this, that it was impossible not to entertain doubts as to its genuine nature.
A scientist writing in an official document, "I cannot rule out that this is a prank."
That is our animal this week, the creature that made the British scientific establishment publicly doubt itself.
Calling all Fennekians!
This week we're heading to the rivers of eastern Australia, and we found something extraordinary.
A mammal that seals its eyes shut, plugs its ears, closes its nostrils, and hunts in complete darkness by sensing electricity with its face.
Let's go.
Okay, the electricity. Tell me everything.
So, the platypus hunts underwater, and when it dives, something remarkable happens. Its eyes press closed, sealed by small muscular grooves. Its ears do the same. Its nostrils shut themselves tight. The platypus becomes, in an instant, completely blind, completely deaf, and unable to smell anything.
And then it hunts.
And then it hunts, in complete darkness with none of its conventional senses working. Because it has something else. Its bill contains 40,000 sensors called electroreceptors. 40,000 arranged in careful stripes across the surface of the bill.
What do they detect?
Every animal muscle that contracts, every heart that beats, produces a tiny electrical current. It's incredibly faint, but the platypus's electroreceptors can detect it. So while it's underwater, completely blind and deaf, it's mapping the riverbed around it by reading the electrical signatures of every living thing in it.
A shrimp hiding under a rock.
A shrimp hiding under a rock, the electrical flicker of its tiny muscles as it breathes, detected by the bill from up to 15 or 20 centimeters away. That's 6 to 8 inches, up to about 50 centimeters in the best conditions.
And it's doing this while swimming?
Sweeping its bill side to side in a slow arc as it moves, building a three-dimensional map of the riverbed from pure electrical data. No eyes, no ears, no nose, just the bill, reading the hidden signals of every living thing around it.
It's like it's hearing a song that nothing else can hear.
That's exactly how we describe it in the storybook. The river is full of tiny electrical pulses from thousands of creatures, and the platypus is the only animal that can hear that song.
I want to know how it knows where the prey is, like precisely where.
Here's where the bill gets even more interesting. It doesn't just have electroreceptors, it also has mechanoreceptors, sensors that detect pressure waves, the tiny ripples of water that every moving creature pushes outward.
So it's detecting two things at once.
Two things simultaneously. And here's the clever part. The electrical signal travels through water almost instantaneously at close to the speed of electricity. The pressure wave travels much slower. So when a shrimp moves, the bill gets the electrical flash first, and then, a fraction of a second later, it gets the pressure ripple. And the size of that gap, that tiny gap between the two signals, tells the platypus the precise distance to the prey.
Like lightning and thunder.
Exactly like lightning and thunder. You see the flash, you count the seconds, you hear the boom, and the gap gives you the distance. The platypus is doing that calculation automatically in the dark about dozens of creatures at once.
Without thinking about it.
Without consciously thinking about it. The brain processes it as naturally as we process vision.
No other mammal does this.
Not with a bill in freshwater, no. The platypus is alone in this, and it's been doing it for, as far as we can tell, an extraordinarily long time.
Okay, what else? You mentioned venom before.
So, male platypuses have a spur on the inside of each back ankle. The spur is connected to a venom gland, and the venom is genuinely nasty. It can kill small animals. In humans, it causes intense, prolonged pain that standard painkillers don't touch particularly well. People who've been spurred have described it as among the worst pain they've experienced.
This soft, fluffy river animal is venomous?
Only the males. And females are born with spurs but lose them by about 9 months old.
How does it use the venom?
It's thought to be primarily for competition between males during breeding season, not for hunting prey. It's essentially a weapon for stay away from my stretch of river, delivered at ankle level.
So it hunts by sensing electricity, and if another male gets close, it kicks him with a venomous ankle?
That's an accurate summary, yes.
Okay. The milk. Tell me about the milk, because I've heard things.
The platypus doesn't have nipples. No monotremes does. But the mother nurses her young. The milk seeps through specialized pores in the skin of her abdomen, pools in the fur, and the babies lap it up.
They sweat milk.
They sweat milk. And this milk contains a protein unlike anything else we've found in nature. It's shaped like tiny ringlets, and it actively destroys antibiotic-resistant bacteria. It tears apart the cell walls of some of the most dangerous drug-resistant pathogens we know.
The bacteria that hospitals can't kill?
Those exact ones. And scientists have given this protein a nickname.
What's the nickname?
The Shirley Temple protein.
I'm sorry, the what?
The Shirley Temple protein. Because when the researchers looked at its structure under a microscope, the ringlet shape reminded them of Shirley Temple's famously curly hair. So they named it the Shirley Temple protein. That is the actual, real scientific nickname for this thing.
The platypus sweats milk that contains a ringlet-shaped protein named after a child film star from the 1930s that might save lives from antibiotic-resistant infections.
That is an accurate sentence.
I need a moment.
Take your time.
Okay, you mentioned one more thing. Biofluorescence?
In 2020, a scientist named Paula Spaeth-Anich was examining platypus museum specimens under a UV lamp. Under normal light, platypus fur is brown, sometimes with a creamy yellow underside. Under UV, the fur started glowing.
Glowing.
Cyan and blue-green. The platypus absorbs ultraviolet light and re-emits it as visible light in the teal and green spectrum. Under a UV lamp, it looks like a glowing cartoon animal.
Why does it glow?
We genuinely don't know yet. The leading hypothesis is that it might help platypuses locate each other at dusk and dawn when they're most active, since many animals can see in the UV spectrum even though we can't. Or it might be an ancient feature from early mammals that most lineages later lost.
So, in the dark, by the river, a platypus might look like a little glowing teal creature?
If you had UV-sensitive eyes, yes, which we don't, so we were the last to know.
What does an actual platypus day look like? What's the routine?
They're mainly active at dusk and dawn and at night. During the day, they rest in burrows along the riverbank. They're solitary, mostly. Each animal has a stretch of river it knows well, and the day or night is structured around hunting dives.
How long are the dives?
Each dive is about 30 to 140 seconds. They surface, take a breath, sometimes rest for a moment, then go back under. During a dive, they're collecting prey in cheek pouches because they can't actually chew underwater. No swallowing, just storing.
Cheek pouches? Like a hamster?
Exactly like a hamster, yes. The inside of the cheeks has pouches that fill with prey while the platypus hunts. Then when it surfaces, it grinds everything up.
With teeth?
No teeth. Adults have no teeth at all. They have tough, horny grinding pads like ridged plates instead of teeth, and they deliberately swallow small pieces of gravel to help grind prey in their digestive tract.
They swallow gravel on purpose.
On purpose, it's their grinding mechanism.
And there's no stomach either.
No stomach. The platypus is one of a small group of vertebrates that has entirely lost its stomach through evolution. Food goes from the throat directly into the intestines with no pit stop in an acid-filled sac. The platypus doesn't need the stomach because it's eating soft invertebrates that are easy enough to process without it.
The most unusual mammal in the world doesn't have a stomach.
It skipped the stomach entirely, doesn't need one with its diet.
What about the burrow? Tell me about the burrow.
Impressive. Females dig tunnels into the riverbank that can be up to 30 meters long. That's about 100 feet. Inside the tunnel, the female plugs the passage at multiple points with compacted earth, creating internal doors.
Internal doors inside a 100-foot tunnel.
With multiple doors. And at the end is a nesting chamber about 30 centimeters across, about a foot square, lined with leaves, reeds, and grass that the mother carries there by tucking them under her tail.
She carries leaves with her tail.
The tail is flexible enough to grip a bundle of plant material. She curls around the eggs in the nesting chamber to incubate them. The eggs take about 10 days to hatch. When the puggles arrive, they're tiny and hairless, and they lap up the milk that seeps through the mother's skin.
Puggles.
Puggle technically originated as a nickname for baby echidnas, and it's not the official scientific term, but it's been so widely adopted in conservation writing that it's essentially the standard informal term for baby platypuses now.
Puggle is better than juvenile.
Puggle is significantly better than juvenile.
And the puggles stay in the burrow?
3.5 to 4 months. They emerge fully furred and independent.
Okay, you mentioned sleep. The sleep thing.
The sleep thing. The platypus holds a world record. It experiences more REM sleep than any other known mammal, up to 8 hours of REM sleep per day.
What's REM sleep?
Rapid eye movement sleep is the phase where your eyes move behind your eyelids. Your brain is highly active, and in most mammals, including us, this is when vivid dreaming occurs. We don't know for certain that platypuses dream in any meaningful sense, but during their REM phases, they twitch their bill, their head, their limbs. They're doing something very active.
They might be dreaming of hunting.
The patterns of the movement suggest they're running hunting behaviors. Bill sweeping, the physical motions of following the hidden song through the river, all of it replayed in sleep.
A small brown animal curled in a dark earth burrow, dreaming of electricity in the river.
That might be exactly what's happening. And they sleep about 14 hours a day total, so that's a lot of time for whatever they're doing.
The body temperature is unusual too.
Lower than most mammals, about 32 degrees Celsius, which is 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Typical placental mammals run around 37 Celsius, 99 Fahrenheit. The platypus runs cooler, which conserves energy in cold water environments, and it compensates with extraordinary fur.
How extraordinary?
About 900 individual undercoat hairs per square millimeter, layered with guard hairs on top. The whole system traps a layer of dry, still air against the skin, providing thermal protection equivalent to a 3mm neoprene wetsuit. It's its own built-in wetsuit.
It builds itself a wetsuit out of fur?
And its tail stores fat for energy reserves, helps with steering in the water, and when it walks on land, it walks on its knuckles to protect the webbing on its front feet from wear and tear.
Of course it does.
Why does the platypus matter to the rivers it lives in? Like, what happens if it's gone?
A couple of things. First, it's a predator of benthic invertebrates, the creatures living on the river bottom. Shrimps, worms, crayfish, beetles, all the things the bill picks up in the dark. Keeping those populations in balance is important. If they overpopulate, they can disrupt the food chain below them. The platypus is part of the ecological machinery that keeps the river floor in order.
And the second thing?
The second thing is maybe more important for conservation practice. The platypus is an indicator species. Its presence tells scientists whether a stretch of river is healthy. It needs clean water, stable banks, good oxygen levels, and a rich invertebrate community to survive. If a platypus is living in a stretch of river, all of those things are present. If it disappears, something has gone wrong.
Like a living water quality test.
That's exactly how conservation scientists talk about it. When you protect a river for the platypus, you're protecting the entire river system, every creature that depends on that water quality simultaneously.
And the lineage is ancient, right? You mentioned 150 million years?
Monotremes diverged from the lineage that would become placental mammals over 150 million years ago. The dinosaurs were still here. And this branch of the mammal family went in a completely different direction, keeping some very old biological features that other mammals eventually shed. The platypus still has aspects of its skeleton, its reproduction, and its venom that are more similar to reptiles than to most mammals.
It's carrying evolutionary history.
Living evolutionary history. And because it took such a different path, studying it tells us things about how mammalian traits evolved that we can't learn anywhere else.
And the medicine angle.
The Shirley-Templin protein. Bacteria that resist our most powerful antibiotics kill millions of people globally each year, and that number is rising. The platypus milk protein appears to attack those bacteria through a completely different mechanism than any antibiotic we currently use. Understanding how it works could open new categories of medicine.
From an animal scientists thought was a prank in 1799.
Sometimes the oldest outliers carry the most useful secrets.
What's the conservation picture right now for platypuses?
The honest version is that things are moving in the wrong direction, but not without hope. The IUCN, the international body that tracks species status, lists the platypus as near threatened. That's the official status from a 2016 assessment, still current as of now. But in 2020, researchers from UNSW published a major analysis showing the real picture is probably worse than that. They found the platypus's range had shrunk by 22% over 30 years.
That's a significant chunk of territory gone.
In New South Wales, the population dropped by about a third. Some Victorian river systems saw crashes of up to 65%. The researchers called for the IUCN status to be upgraded to vulnerable, though that hasn't happened officially yet.
What's driving the decline?
A few things that stack on top of each other. First, drought and low water. The platypus needs stable, deep river channels. When rivers drop, the deep hunting areas disappear, prey populations thin, and platypuses sometimes have to travel overland to find water. And temperatures above 34 degrees Celsius, about 93 Fahrenheit, are lethal for them. Climate change makes extreme heat and drought more frequent, and the platypus has no buffer for that.
And the 2019-2020 bushfires.
Those fires burned across enormous stretches of eastern Australia, including major river catchments. The estimate is that they killed somewhere between 14 and 18% of platypus populations in directly affected areas within 9 months. Not just from the fires themselves, but from the aftermath. The riparian vegetation that holds riverbanks together burned, roots died, banks collapsed, sediment washed into rivers, and the invertebrate communities that platypuses feed on were smothered.
The food supply disappeared under silt.
For months, in some areas longer.
That's a lot of pressure from a lot of directions.
It is. But I want to talk about what's working, because it's real.
Please.
The Australian Platypus Conservancy has been doing scientific research and population monitoring since 1994. They run the Australian Platypus Monitoring Network, a citizen science program where trained community volunteers monitor platypus presence at waterways across the country. More people watching rivers means better data, which means better conservation decisions.
Community people helping count platypuses.
In 2021, the O'Donnell Foundation ran what they called the Great Australian Platypus Search. They took environmental DNA samples from 2,000 waterway sites across Victoria, looking for traces of platypus DNA in the water. You don't need to see the animal. If it was there, it left a biological trace. They mapped the presence and absence of platypuses across an enormous area in a way that had never been done before.
That's clever science.
Really clever. And in 2023, a coalition including WWF Australia and UNSW reintroduced 10 platypuses into the Royal National Park, just south of Sydney. This was a stretch of river where the platypus had been locally extinct for 50 years.
50 years without a platypus?
And in 2024, acoustic monitoring equipment in the river confirmed the birth of a wild puggle in that park, the first wild platypus born there in half a century. Alive. Confirmed.
That is the story.
That's the story. 10 animals placed back in a river. 1 year later, wild births. The river was quiet for 50 years, and then the song came back.
I want to put a poster of that on my wall. Okay, quick fire check-in. 3 questions. Pause when you hear the question and try the answer before we tell you.
Ready?
Question 1. How many electroreceptors are in a platypus bill?
40,000. 40,000, plus roughly 60,000 additional pressure-sensing mechanoreceptors, giving the bill close to 100,000 total sensory inputs packed into a small, rubbery paddle.
Question 2. What makes the platypus a monodreme?
It lays eggs, soft, leathery, marble-sized eggs. Only 5 mammal species on Earth do this, and the platypus is the only one that's semi-aquatic.
Question 3. What is the Shirley Temple protein and why should we know about it?
It's a ringlet-shaped protein in platypus milk, named for the curly-haired film star, and it's capable of destroying antibiotic-resistant bacteria through a mechanism that's completely different from any antibiotic we currently use, which is why researchers are studying it very carefully.
3 for 3, or however many you got. The answers are always in the episode.
That's the platypus, a real creature in a real river in eastern Australia, doing real things that sound like magic.
If you want to go deeper, the storybook, the pictures, all of it. Find us at Fenekie.com.
Until next week, Fennekians, keep wondering.